Welcome back to Late Night Reading Hour. Every once in a while, I find a book that I think makes me want to lift a car over my head and throw it across the street because it's just that good. And that book today is Mad Love in N.Y.C. by Ariel Holmes, and that is her memoir. This memoir is what the script for the movie Heaven Knows What by the Safdie brothers is based on. Heaven Knows What is very interesting. I got really interested in it because the backstory of its creation is essentially the Safdie brothers meeting Ariel Holmes on a subway in New York, finding out that she was really interesting and had led a very different kind of lifestyle. They ended up paying her per page to write her story, which then became the script for the movie. And they had her star as herself in it. I don't know if any of the other characters in the film were characters from her life, but she was the main person in it, and it led to her coming to California and having another role in another film, but she's unfortunately sort of dropped off. I can't find much else about her right now. And since seeing that movie and getting interested in the story behind it, I read a lot of interviews about it and found out that they were going to publish a book. They're going to publish the script as the book, as she had written it. And I was so excited for that. But nothing came out, and nothing came out, and nothing came out, and I would check periodically for just for any possibilities that it may be published. And last year around my birthday, I checked again, and it was coming out. It had come out. This is the copy. It's Mad Love in New York City, or N.Y.C. It's by Ariel Holmes, and it's published by her as well. So it's copyright 2014. Came out last year in 2023, and that all just makes me wonder what happened, why it took so long, blah, blah, blah. But we won't talk too much about that today, just because I want to talk a little bit about the writing. And this is something I think we can call, I hate this term, there's no good term for it, but an outsider work, right? This is her first book, I believe, even though I know she's writes poetry throughout, makes a lot of art, creates a lot of art, as is explained in the story. But we have this piece of literature by someone who's not really written before, or probably isn't trained in writing, and I love reading things like this, especially when they are not insecure. So I think a lot of time amateur beginning writers get this air around them because of their lack of experience. It leads to using really like grand, unrelatable metaphors or big words that don't really fit. And this book is wonderful in its simplicity in language, and also how down to earth it feels and how real it feels. I love the use of capitalization and exclamation points to provide emphasis. It really gives voice to her personality, and that's wonderful to see. She really lays it all out, and it's an incredibly generous memoir. It is harrowing at times, horrible at times, hilarious at times, and all throughout we have this theme of community and this theme of love that is usually absent from depictions of homelessness and depictions of drug culture in mainstream media. So it took me a long time to even open this book after I got it. It took me a long time to watch the movie after I knew I wanted to watch it. That's because it does have a lot of instances of heroin use, and domestic abuse, violence towards women. And growing up, I had a lot of people I was close to who were addicted to heroin. I fortunately have never struggled with that, but when I encounter things that I know are going to be dealing with that topic, I don't go into it lightly because it's just not great memories. And at the same time, it's really intriguing because I want to understand everybody, and I want to understand how people think, how people in any walk of life, if they care to share what they're doing with me, with you, with the reader, I want to know. I want to know what's going on. So we have this book, Mad Love in N.Y.C., and it's a memoir. It reads a lot like a diary, especially in the early pages. But then it turns into something that is more stream of consciousness. It reminds me a lot of the Beats. It reminds me a lot of maybe what Kerouac would be today. You know, when I read the Beats, when I read Kerouac, there's a dissonance, cognitive dissonance, right? Because I know that they're wild, they're really out there and different, but with the world the way that it is today, it doesn't necessarily read as quite as intense as I think it was back when it was happening. But this, however, is extremely intense, and I think that it's giving me the feeling of if I was born back in the day and reading a Jack Kerouac book, I would have, it would elicit the same kind of emotions. And it's also similar to the Beats because so much of that is just like, I met up with this person and we went here and we got drunk and we got really drunk and then we did drugs and then we got some money from someone, and there's this is the sort of narrative that's happening between these two types of books. So I'll get started. You don't want to hear me talk forever about this, but I want to get started with the structure and just read you a couple of passages that jumped out to me. We won't read a big chunk. Like I said, this is the work of Ariel Holmes. And in her own words, she says, the chapters in this book are not in chronological order. They were all written independently of each other and are ordered in the order I wrote them. Originally, I intended to merge them all together into one piece with a linear timeline. However, once I started this process, it just didn't feel right. I liked the jumpiness of everything, like how some parts are extremely vague, then explain more in depth later on. It feels authentic and free, and so I left it like that. I hope you enjoy reading it. So we start off with sort of chapters, and they are jumping around. And there's some attempt at structure in the beginning, but when you get about halfway through, the last half of the book is one long passage with maybe one or two shorter chapters at the end. And also, as you go through this book, you get a sense that there's a point where whoever was proofreading it or whoever was editing it got a little fatigued and just kind of stopped being so detailed. So if you do decide to read this, please hold space for there to be a lot of spelling errors and some grammatical stuff as well. I think that these flaws don't really take away from the essence of the story. Not in my mind. So we'll go ahead and read a little bit of what I've marked. So here's just a snippet of a day in the life. So as I was waiting for Mike on the corner, and I really don't know how this came about, I start talking to this Hasidic Jewish guy, and he asks me if I'm drunk. I tell him the truth, and he gives me a $20 bill. I assume because I was beautiful and awesome at the same time. Probably not used to that. Most people these days aren't, sadly. At least in the communities I get to witness expand/grow old every day. I was belligerent and happy. And so when Mike showed up once again, I jumped around him, arms wide open, squeezed him into me, and told him I'd buy him the next pint because I just got paid for being drunk and awesome and beautiful. He laughs and says, "That's fucking great." And we make our way back uptown again. I don't know what it is, but the tone of that passage, wonderful. I love it. There's this jovialness, this joy throughout this book. It really is a roller coaster ride, and she describes herself as being on a roller coaster ride as well. And the next page was a little passage. So I felt like Thumbelina. Thumbelina is a children's cartoon movie about a tiny girl who meets a fairy prince and marries him. But between meeting him and marrying, she gets kidnapped and finds herself on a great adventure, a mission to get back home. As a kid, I loved the movie. There's some good qualities like the way they used color play and the songs that made it great. But in terms of plot, it was pretty bad, and you can see that as an adult. Thumbelina pretty much will believe anything as long as you sing it to her, and that's how I felt, like I was going up and down on life's roller coaster. And up and down with my passions, oblivious to what my actions cause in the world around me. Many people told me in those past 2 days that I am intelligent, but I never use my head, and I find that to be so true. I have this love-hate relationship with myself. I live so in the moment, but too in the moment. I know the right thing to do when it comes up, but I never do it, because I'm always being carried away on the winds of passion. However, after that second night ended, I decided to break up with James. I didn't even want another relationship after Scully. I realized Scully was a rebound, and so would anybody else be. At least anyone I'd be with this close to our breakup. Ilya's and mine. 3 years is a long time, at least for me, to be with someone. Especially being as young as we are. Another thing I realized, I may be very mature rationally, and even emotionally, but I am still young, and if I'm going to be with anybody, I want someone young too, so we can experience the world together. James already had double my lifetime's experience, and even though he still has things to learn, everybody does, he's not a person I can grow with. It's hard to explain, but that's how I feel, and as close as I can get to writing it down. I really enjoy how this book goes between sort of the daily logging of events to these little moments of introspection to the most terrifying thing that you've ever read. And I won't get too much into it, just in case you'd like to watch the movie or read the book. But yeah, it does get fairly disturbing. Although I will say that the content is disturbing, but not explicit. So when we have accounts of doing heroin, we're saying they shot up or they sniffed a bag. It's not detailed at all, which is helpful. And it's more of a matter of fact thing rather than something to elicit an image or a feeling. So that's helpful, and it's the same way with the sex as well in here. It's very much just, and we did this. End of story. But one of those harrowing events, the aftermath, she is in the hospital, and this passage made me laugh a little bit, and I'll explain why. You might already know. So she's in the hospital, Kevin was there because he actually cared about me. He brought my favorite book at Barnes & Noble's and brought it to me. The Wise Man's Fear. It's a really cool fantasy science fiction novel and second in an amazing trilogy. I'd already read the first book. He brought me candy sometimes, too, and even my ginger drink that I love. I sorted out a lot of feelings that week in the hospital. I came to the realization that I was happy that Ilya broke up with me. Of course I still loved him, but I just couldn't be with him anymore. He was too cruel. I couldn't deal with it. And now that I'd be alone, I'd be able to focus completely on myself and make money for myself and get off the streets and better my life. So that made me laugh because I think these accounts are from the early 2010s, and we are still waiting on that third book. I like to imagine that she's also looking at her watch, wondering when that third book's going to come out, too. Anyway, that's all the passages that I'll share with you. If you'd like to read this book, I recommend it. So, just a few other thoughts that I didn't get to touch too much on. We don't have a lot of experiences like this book is explaining in media and movies and stuff. I think that when you usually have a story about homelessness or drug addiction, it's more about a redemption arc, right? A redemption arc, or the opposite of that, someone descending into a habit. And the structure of this book does a really good job at subverting that expectation, because there are moments where she's wanting to become clean and on the road to doing that, but then there's the next chapter is her starting to get into the lifestyle. So it's going back. It's not a clear progression from from abusing yourself to not abusing yourself. It's this jumping of back and forth in a cycle that I think is really interesting, because it feels really real. And I think that that's lacking in media, because these aren't the people telling the stories, right? We want to exploit the drama and create the drama, but we don't usually live it. So I think that this book is incredibly generous, and I hope that, Ariel, wherever you are doing well. And that's a whole nother conversation. The ethics of the entire situation with the Safdie brothers and Ariel Holmes. What happened there? There's the only mention of them is on the back cover of this book. I don't believe they assisted in getting this book printed at all. She was also very young I think she's about 19 when writing, or when the events of this book are taking place. And yeah, I'm not sure where she is now or what she's doing, but hey, if you see this video, I hope that things are going okay for you. And I don't know, maybe we'll see each other one day. All right, well, thanks for being here with me today on this beautiful day. Beautiful day, beautiful day for reading. I'll see you next time with something else.